to infinity and beyond.
What's up, everyone? It's Roger and James here from DisKingdom with Infinity and Beyond. In this episode, we are going to be talking about all things Disney video games. We're going to be talking about Star Wars, Marvel, and Disney. And for this episode, it's kind of a pre-recorded one, and we're going to be talking about the future of Disney video games. What's going to happen now, what's happening, what's coming out, and what we think is going to be coming out in the future. So, I think what we'll do first off, James, is how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good. Yeah.
It's very early in the morning.
Yes, it's early morning. So I'm probably at this point where you won't realise is we've recorded this a few weeks ago, and I'm probably sat either in bed or sat on a lovely beach in the sun. So I'm probably very nice right now where I am. So like I said, this week we're going to be talking about Disney games. So I'm going to run through what we know officially has been announced. So this is what we know video games are coming up. Kind of one of those things, I think Disney made this big decision this year to drop Disney Infinity and then basically drop out of, what do they call it, vertical development, which is basically they're no longer making anything themselves. And also, so they're basically licensing everything out. So here's a list of what we know is coming out. So the first game coming out is Disney Magical World 2 on the 3DS. That's coming out in October. It's already been out in Japan last year. It's made by, I think it's Bandai. So that's kind of the next Disney game. Then we're going to have Battlefront Rogue One. That's going to be a new expansion pack coming in December. Also in December, we have got Kingdom Hearts 2.8, Kingdom Hearts HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue, which includes 0.2. It also includes Dream Drop Distance, which is the remastered version of the 3DS one. This is the big game for me for this winter. This is my winter game. I'm going to be honest, I've already planned basically December and January is pretty much just going to be playing this game. That's my prime concern of getting through Dream Drop Distance. So that's that one there. We've also got here Marvel Pinball Woman of Power, a new pinball game coming to Zen Pinball, Marvel Pinball. That'll be out at some point too. It might have even been announced by the time we record this, but that one's coming as well. We also know there's going to be a Telltale Marvel game. No more details on that. Spider-Man's coming to the PlayStation 4. We also know Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming. Again, we might know a little bit more about that because since we recorded this, we'll have Tokyo Game Show and stuff like that. Also announced, we have got Battlefront 2, which will have more offline mode and will feature characters from the new movies like Kylo Ren. Respawn are also working on a new Star Wars game, and also Viscery are working on a new Star Wars game. So that is, I think that's officially everything we know. So while we thought it was quite barren, when I did actually write everything down when I was writing this list, I was like, that's not too bad of a list actually. But you notice there's not a lot of Disney there. There's not a lot of Disney. So James, what jumped out at you from those lists there?
Well, obviously the multitude of Star Wars titles, even though these are all several years out except for the Rogue One expansion, you can tell Disney is going to be hitting Star Wars pretty hard. They want to milk the franchise for as much as they can, and as long as they're putting quality out, they can milk it as much as they want. Yeah. That's pretty much the big one. And then, like you said, there's almost no Disney with the exception of Kingdom Hearts and Disney Magical World. But also not much Marvel. You know, I think that they've got more in the pipeline than they're telling us, but I barely even count the pinball one because that's really, it's a pinball table or four of them. We don't know anything about the Telltale games, but they put out quality in general. And then Spider-Man, which at the time of this recording, we just saw the PS4 Pro launch information about it, and like, oh, that's nice. Now show us some gameplay.
Yeah.
Show us what we're going to do.
Yeah, it definitely, for me, Star Wars definitely feels like they've got all the big branding in place for big major title every year for the next 4 or 5 years. Respawn are working on like a shooting one, which is kind of, I think, going to be very different to Battlefront. I'm wondering, because they did Titanfall, we don't know quite how that's going to work. Maybe we're going to see more space battle, more shooting. I don't know. It'd be also nice to see a different take on it. I think the one that's really caught everyone's attention is the one that I think is Viscery working on, which was created by Amy Hennig, which created the Uncharted video games. And this one has been a lot of like talk about. I think this one's like the one after Battlefront 2. This is the one I'm excited about because I think it's a little bit more. I think everyone's excited because how well she did with the Uncharted games.
Yeah, and this one, she has actually put out a little bit of information about this with each of the game shows that come by and whatnot, but we still know virtually nothing about it. But out of all of them, this is the one that probably has the most inherent potential behind it.
Yeah.
Because the first Battlefront was kind of shaky.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way, a little bit shaky. They'll probably fix it for 2. We don't know what's going on with the other first-person shooter or shooter game. It might be third-person. But this is the one where people can go, all right, we don't know what it's going to be, but there's so much possibility here.
Yeah. I mean, I think this kind of slides over to the Telltale thing as well of, I think with Battlefront, it had this whole, like, episode kind of content, but people maybe weren't quite so used to that concept of how that was going to work. I mean, Telltale have been doing it with their, like, they do release an episode bit by bit. I know, like, Hitman has been very, very well known that they did this experiment with this, like, episode, like, content release, which has actually, while there was a lot of discussion about it not working, it's actually done the exact opposite. There's been a lot of praise. Now we're, like, into nearly a year later, and they've announced seasons 2 and 3 are going to be coming. This idea of, like, seasonal updates, of having I love it. I've been a big fan of this system because for me as an adult player, it allows me more time and it gets me to spread out the content. So with Battlefront, they kind of did that with these, like, expansion packs, and I don't know whether or not Battlefront 2 they'll listen to the thing of there wasn't enough content at the beginning, or whether or not Battlefront 2 will then expand a whole other year of video games. Because the only thing I did think of is if it's like Rogue One's coming out in, like, December, Battlefront 2 is not coming out till October, November for the holiday season. That's quite a big empty space. I don't know if that's going to work.
I would be a little bit happy if they announced one more expansion pack, and if they included it with the season pass, which is already overpriced to begin with. Not that would help me because I don't have it, but for people who paid for the season pass, it'd be a nice little, we listened to you kind of moment. But I could see them throwing in some content from, like, Rebels or something like that. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot. I think definitely, like, Star Wars has become the way that the success of Battlefront and basically changed their entire format for how they wanted to carry on with gaming. So Star Wars is good. Star Wars is looking very, very good in terms of what gaming they're going to be doing. And in all honesty, I've got really no worries about Star Wars games because we know what's happening. We know what the plan is. They've told us. You can kind of sit back and go, yeah, you keep making the games. We know we've got 5 games in development, and they're going to be coming out 1 a year. Good. Marvel is Star Wars looking pretty good at the minute. Yeah,
and so why don't we jump into Marvel then?
Yeah.
We know about Spider-Man. We know about the Telltale Games game, but we don't know what the content is. We don't know who's going to be in it or anything like that. I can bet you it's not going to be the X-Men, though.
No.
And we have...
It's just an Inhumans one, because I know your love for them.
We won't go into that. But if anyone cares, they can follow my Twitter, and they can hear exactly what I think about the Inhumans. And we're talking about the comic ones here, not Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But, and then the Women of Power pinball, and I'm assuming we'll see plenty of other pinball tables as, Infinity War and Black Panther and all those start coming out.
Yeah, I think Marvel's had a slightly different approach, especially the last year, where they have been updating apps and games. They've been going down the sort of updating Marvel Heroes, updating Future Fight, updating Contest of Champions. Obviously, they've dropped off Avengers Alliance, so I think they're just going to double down on keeping those games updated. I wouldn't be so surprised we're going to get we know we're going to get a Doctor Strange sweep through at some point as well, with the movie coming out this month. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I know with Marvel they've decided, I think with console, that they want to develop stuff that's not connected to movies in the same way. So I think that's a good idea. I think they're working on a lot of other stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on a fighting game, maybe Contest of Champions console version. They know Injustice, that's going to be a big game coming out in 2017, which I'm going to love. I'm not going to jump to the DC.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I love the first one. And it wouldn't surprise me if we had a new Ultimate Alliance 3. I think they've done quite a very good job of relaunching that brand this year. As of someone that's played both now, I can say, yeah, I want number 3. Yep. Now I've finished both of them, now I can kind of sit and go, yeah, I want free, please. Asked me 2 months ago.
As someone who has not played, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, well, I was just saying, it's like now I've done both.
So, as someone who has not played the remaster,
yeah. So that's good.
How about we let's cut this part out and re-record this?
Yeah. It definitely feels like for me that I think sort of the Marvel side of things has been doing very well. I think we'll be good on Marvel.
I think Marvel will be fine. I like that they're not going to be following the movies very closely, that they're not going to be doing movie tie-ins for the most part. I think the best comic-based video games that have come out are the ones that have been able to tell their own stories.
Yeah.
Looking at, like, say, the Batman Arkham games. And the ones that try to shoehorn into the movie just don't work quite as well. So
yeah. No, I definitely feel... I think Disney and Marvel, I'm really not really too worried about them. I think I will go into a little bit more on the Lego side of things, because I still think that this is something as well. Now, on those two subjects, I think Star Wars... I think what we saw with Force Awakens, I think we're going to see that for Rogue One, Episode 8, Episode 9, Han Solo. I think we're going to see a solo game. We're going to see a Han Solo game, but I think we're going to see a game for each movie 6 months after release, because I think they did a fantastic job with Force Awakens. It sold very well. You know, it's always in the top 10. It was #1. I think we're going to see that for years to come with the Star Wars brand as well, with Lego.
And I have no problem with that, especially if they're going to create some like DLC on the side like they did for Lego Force Awakens, where we get additional information about things that happened outside the movie, such as C-3PO getting his arm, you know, some of the other stuff going down at Takodana and all that stuff. If they can include that, as well as create a faithful but funny version of the movie, I could totally end up buying it every year. No problem.
I thought that story mode from Force Awakens was a really well done. That was so much fun. It entertained me. It was a very well done game. Yeah, I just feel like that's going to be the set for the next few years for that one. I think for Marvel, they teased it in Marvel Superheroes. They said that they basically ended it with saying, "Here's the Guardians of the Galaxy." And then in Avengers, there were no Guardians of the Galaxy. The first movie was not included. I have a feeling that when's Guardians... Is it out March next year? Or May?
I think May. I think they're going for a May-October release schedule at the moment.
Yeah. Would not surprise me if around the time after the movie's been released, or around the same, probably after the movie, if we see Guardians of the Galaxy Lego with both 1 and 2 as the main story arc going right through it, or with the Marvel. It just feels like they left out of Avengers for a reason. They. Yep. Oh, you've gone quiet.
Yeah, it's the only reason they could have left it out. There's no rights issues there. There's no problems with, you know, can they use Rocket Raccoon or Groot or any of that stuff. So, yeah, it would make sense to me that they held it back for its own release.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would hope is that maybe they include some stuff in addition to Guardians of the Galaxy and whatever they release next. So
I mean, they can easily put in, you know... I mean, we know we've got lots of Marvel movies. I think there'll probably be an Infinity War kind of big epic Marvel game coming later. Now, this then leads on to... they've already done this with the Harry Potter stuff. They've done some collections. It wouldn't surprise me if we see some Disney ones from the PS3, like Indiana Jones and Star Wars brought up to PlayStation 4, remaster them a little bit. I don't know about the Star Wars. I think the Star Wars one, they're probably not... They might just bring over a quick cheap port for it, but the Disney, I could see them redoing the Disney ones because in the year or two ahead, because that's a nice quick easy title for them to kind of churn out, especially in this lull where they've kind of had to, I expect they've been scrambling around for some quick licensing deals to get some money in from video games over the past couple of months.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like, you know, with them putting the Harry Potter Lego games out, there's no reason for them to not at least throw a quick and dirty update on. The Lego games, you know, graphics aren't really the selling point for them.
No.
They've always been clean and and workmanship, but never like super fantastic or fabulous or whatever. So, you upscale them to 1080p, you make sure the frame rate is solid, and you're good to go. So
now this is where I'm going to slightly change on the Disney, because I don't know, in the future we've got a few movies coming up, and this could tie in with other video game releases. So we know we've got Pirates of the Caribbean, we know we've got Indiana Jones, but that's a way off. We've got Incredibles 2, we've got what else? We've got Cars 3, we've also got there's some other ones like Coco and Gigantic. These are all the big like pigeonhole ones that I think are safe to kind of say there was going to be something for these. Especially now they've got a bit of time ahead. I could see a new Toy Story video game coming at some point. I could see a new Incredibles. I think those brands are big enough that they've already had games before, that they will want to do a new version of them by some license we want to take them on. Whether or not they're tied into the new movies, whether or not they kind of incorporate the past of those movies. I think Cars, Incredibles, and Toy Story, I would not be at all surprised if there have been some deals done now to get a new game out around the time that the movie, whether or not it's a movie tie-in or connected with them, I don't know, but do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. And with the exception of Pirates, they haven't done a Lego game for any of these. So, if they were to do Toy Story, they could have a Toy Story game that covers all 4 of the movies. You can do the original trilogy, and then whatever 4 ends up being about. The Incredibles the same way. You can do a 1 and a 2. Or you could go a completely different direction and have the Incredibles be like a side story in between 1 and 2. Show Jack getting his powers, or Dash and Violet growing up and stuff like that. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think actually for me, I feel the best way for that would be for them to be, those characters to be licensed out to other companies to make it a full video game based on those franchises, and then for the Lego, kind of go in a different direction and kind of go the Lego Dimensions system, because they would allow them to do a double dip. That would allow them to hit people twice, because you'd be able to, if they did a Buzz Lightyear and a Woody Lego Dimensions level pack or something like that, or even a story pack, that would open up a windows for them to do a double hit on those characters.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I think that would especially work pretty well for some of the other franchises, some of the ones that don't have sequels and probably couldn't carry their own game. You could definitely pop in some like good dinosaur characters, or you could get the Inside Out characters, because they obviously worked pretty well for Disney Infinity. So there's no reason they couldn't work in Dimensions as well. Yeah,
I do feel with Lego Dimensions, it's a case of when rather than if, because I feel like there is money to be made. Whether how much they bring in there, I think the Star Wars and the Marvel side of things with Lego is a little bit different, because I don't think Marvel are going to go into it. I just don't think it's going to happen. They don't even like playing with Disney, so they ain't going to play with DC and everybody else. Star Wars started the brand with Lego games. They've got the characters already built up. But if they're doing the single game experiences, I just can't see what it would be like for Disney to do a Rogue One story pack, for example, or an episode. They're going to do a separate game because they make more money from that. But I could see them double hitting us twice. Released like let's say take Rogue One for example. Say Rogue One video game comes out in June like it did last year or this year. Wouldn't surprise me if you got a J figure come out in December when the movie comes out, because they can tie in a lot quicker. Double dip, do a double dip on us.
See, I could see them doing something like that. Because they know the Lego minifigures for Star Wars will sell regardless of whether you buy Dimensions or not. If you get a little R2-D2 in Dimensions for, on sale $6 to $8 or whatever, people will buy it whether or not they have the game. Yeah. But for Star Wars, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, rather than doing, say, like Rogue One, I could see them dipping into alternate media, do like the Rebels, because you don't necessarily need a full Star Wars Rebels game. No. But they could do pretty well as like fun packs. Yeah. And people would love to get Sabine and Zeb and Kanan and Hera. We never got an Infinity Hera, so maybe throw us a bone and
Yeah.
toss her into dimensions.
And also they've got their own, that free maker adventure, depends on how that's gone down, whether or not they're going to renew that. If they want to push that, that's their own characters, they could do this. But I think Lego Dimensions, I still think it's a case of I think something's going to happen. I think there's money on the table to be made. It will work. Certain characters will make more sense. And I think some movie tie-ins and just some fun packs, some level packs. I don't know. I don't think they're going to go down the story pack. That's the only thing with the Lego Dimensions.
Well, I don't think they really need to do story packs for Disney. They've got the same thing with Star Wars, where you release a fun pack with Mickey or Minnie or any of the recognizable characters, any of the princesses. People are going to buy it. Yeah. They don't need anything else. It's probably going to end up on their shelf. They might toss it into the game once or twice, but they'll make their money just by releasing the characters. Yeah. So
I'm going to sort of switch gear from Lego. And I'm going to go into some other kind of tie-ins, because this is kind of something I've been thought about. Obviously, Lego Dimensions is a nice, easy tie-in for them, but they've done it with other games. For example, Little Big Planet, they release costume packs, and they release level packs. And they only recently did the Monsters University, Monsters Inc. pack. Also, Minecraft got some Star Wars characters, and I can't help but feel this is something that I could see happening a bit more. Even just with those games, I could see it happening because they're popular. But just in general, I could see them being brought into other characters as skins and stuff very easily in the future as well.
Yeah, I agree. These, I don't know what the genre would necessarily be called, but let's call them like maker games or something like that, where there's a lot of community content behind them. There's a lot of customization content in there. There's no reason that Disney can't just say, all right, you've got this game, you want to customize it, here, have a Luke Skywalker skin. Yeah. $3 will give you a Luke Skywalker skin, or a Rebels pack, or a Rebels in this case being Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and all them. But
yeah, honestly, it's been one of those things. I picked up Little Big Planet free this summer while it was on PlayStation sale. I picked up I picked up the Marvel pack and a few other ones, and suddenly there was like, it might sound bad, they kind of turned it into a Disney game and a Marvel game, because now I've got these characters in there, so I'll play them a bit more. But it's weird, like you're playing through the level, but you've got like Deadpool on as your main character, and it's a bit like, this is really freaky, but it turns the entire game. And I just think it wouldn't surprise me if we see some more crossover into this like licensing thing of bringing them into other games. Depends what kind of big games are coming out in the future, because that's the if Little Big Planet 4 comes out, everything's usually backwards compatible with them anyway. But generally, I could see something like that happening, where they tie in with some, adding new content with other titles, like we said, like Lego Dimensions, Little Big Planet, Minecraft, things like that. Those big popular kids games that they can just link into very easily and make some money.
Yeah, and for them, it's a minimum amount of effort. Most of the coding and programming is done by the guys who make these games. And as long as Marvel and Disney and Lucasfilms maintain creative control, which is to say, like, we don't like the way that this costume translates, make some modifications, there's really a no downside to this for them, unless for some reason their models end up getting absolutely butchered. Yeah,
I mean, it's like, you mean like Little Big Planet. I mean, they literally only added Ninja Turtles, like, for me, when we're recording this, literally last week. So they're still adding like costume packs and stuff to the content even now. So if they did do, I could easily see, and they did a big update, a few things. So I think we'll see a little bit more of this, because it's just easy, cheap. And I also feel specifically for Disney over the next year, because of the way game development is, they're probably going to be looking like long term of signing up some licenses for like long time down the line. Like I said, doing a Cars game and a Toy Story game and a Pirates of the Caribbean game but they're going to be a few years away. Tying into like Little Big Planet and Lego Dimensions is a nice quick blast now. Because 2017 could be a drought if they don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything in their schedule is either coming out before the end of this year, and with the exception of Battlefront 2, we've got nothing after that. So, they and Disney's not stupid. Contrary to what people may believe about like business decisions versus money decisions versus standing behind their product, they're not stupid. They know They need to continue to exploit the brand names, and they need to make sure that people are out there seeing the Star Wars characters and seeing the Disney characters, so that they will appear in other places.
Yeah. Now, I definitely feel like we're right at that point where there's a short-term plan and there's a long-term plan for Disney at this point with the licensing deals. And I think in the long term, they will just cross over and you won't really notice too much difference. I think with the Nintendo NX coming up, there's again opportunity for... There's generally been a lot of portable games been created over the years. We've had 2 Disney ones, Art Academy and Magic of World 2 this year. Again, I think we'll continue to see that kind of carrying on with the NX, depending on if they're cross-platformable with maybe with the Xbox or PlayStation. You'll see more companies are going to step forward, because I know from franchising and licensing, a lot of video game companies like to pay that fee because they get almost guaranteed to jump to the top of the queue when they get released, because they're a known franchise rather than releasing something separate. Continuing on with the console thing, Kingdom Hearts. We got Kingdom Hearts 2.8 later this month, or later this year. And we know we've got Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, obviously, at the time of recording, we don't know if they've announced a release date or anything like that. I think this game's coming in 2017 as the big block thing for next Christmas or holiday season. I think they're getting... It's Final Fantasy 15 this year. Kingdom Hearts 3 is their big game for next year. And that might be our big Disney video game of the year. And that might be the good way of tiding us over for the console experience by having a major 30, 40 hour single player game.
Yeah, and if they do push it back even further than 2017, they're going to start to lose any of the goodwill that they've built up with this franchise, because fans are only going to stick around for so long before they move on to other stuff. And they might be able to bridge some of that gap with a couple more re-releases. We're still holding out for hopes for Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 getting the jump up to PS4 and Xbox One. I know you just finished, or you're still in the process of playing Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. Yeah,
I think those remastered 1.5s and 2.5s, whether or not it comes together as the Kingdom Hearts 2.9.9 edition, I think they're gonna have to bring it to Xbox One and PlayStation 4, because long term there is money to be made if this platform is going to be around for 15, 20, 30 years, where they are just constantly upgrading, is the way I think it's going to go. And also, they could bring it to NX as well. They can just hit everything on all 3 platforms, because I think even NX is based on the same PC infrastructure as well. They're all going down the one line.
Right. And they've already appeared on several Nintendo platforms with the DS and the 3DS, so there's plenty of reason to expect that Nintendo fans would have played the Kingdom Hearts games, or would want to play the Kingdom Hearts game. And they're frankly just leaving money on the table by not updating them to the current generation.
Yeah. And I also feel like long term as well. I mean, they tend to kind of churn out a Kingdom Hearts game every year. And they, because a lot of people go, well, 3's just coming out. Well, it wasn't just 3. They have had, Chain of Memories. You also had Birth by Sleep. You had Dream Dot Distance. You had Recoded 3. They've actually had like 5 or 6 games in between them all. So I would expect 4, 5, 6, whether or not I don't know whether or not when they actually get down to the numbering system, whether or not they might simplify it and just go down, once 3's done, Kingdom Hearts 4, Kingdom Hearts 5, Kingdom Hearts 6, rather than all these weird code names. Just because they're going to be like, right, you've got a license for another 10 years, make some games, and they'll send them away to make them. I think there's going to be many more after 3. It just may be, I know they want to use 3 as like a finishing one story, but I think they'll do so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about the franchise because, as I mentioned, I haven't really played it very much, but it definitely sounds like the kind of thing that they can just continue to push and push and push, and as new Disney movies come out and as new Square games come out, they can just add on to those, because we already know Big Hero 6 is coming to it, and I'm sure some of the more recent Disney titles are going to be added as well.
Yeah, and then they could even add Marvel and Star Wars if they really wanted to. I think generally, for a game that was released 10 plus years ago, or was it 15 years ago, I think it was now, there's still that love for these games. This is a franchise that they know they can make some money off of, so I think this one's not going anywhere. But yeah, so console-wise, I do wonder if we are just going to go back to the days of I don't know necessarily if they're going to go down the days of just movie tie-ins, but maybe just character tie-ins. You know, you look at the roster of what games and stuff they've got. You know, they're just going to license out these brands. Different, you know, do you want to make a game company go, can we make a game for you? We're like, right, yeah, which license do you want to pay for? But it's going to be, I don't know if we'll see quite so much like Disney Universe, where we'll see a massive range of Disney characters. I think you're going to see like specific brands go out.
I mean, that's certainly a decent possibility, especially if they use kind of their Star Wars philosophy, which was, oh, you want to use the license? Okay, you can use the license. From a developer point of view, depending on what the licensing fees end up being, you know, if you're making random console RPG or random console like side scroller or whatever, if you slap a Disney brand on it, you're going to sell 10 times as many as just a regular one if you're a little developer trying to make a name for themselves. And if the prices are reasonable, it might be worthwhile for them to do that. And if Disney's willing to do it, we could definitely see a lot of like indie publishers kind of picking these up.
I mean, that was the thing. I think like this year we had like Tron Run, which was kind of like a small indie digital only release of and it kind of came out of nowhere. It was a real fun game. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was definitely worth the value. The expansion pack, the level season pass was very well good. And that was a kind of an indication of how they can just do... That one came out of nowhere. Small little independent, digital only platform. I think we are going to see more of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason for Disney to hold back on stuff like that, especially if they can maintain a certain amount of quality control on their end as well. So, and
I think it's well that the rise of the indie game over the last few years, with the development of digital platforms, has allowed games to be smaller but more regular, and I think that suits into these kind of concepts. I think, you know, if they're priced in that tier of $20-$30, they get a little bit more leniency, but they can also get it out quicker. And you know, I mean, Kingdom Hearts is a big, like, you know, 30-40 hour expansion. You're not going to see too many games like that nowadays.
No, and even from the AAA budget developers, you're not going to see it, because so much money, so much time has to go into developing the actual underlying part of the game. You know, just building the game itself, let alone developing levels and stories and stuff. So,
yeah.
And you hear stories all the time of developers being like, well, we had a 30-hour adventure, but by the time release came down, it's 8 hours because we didn't have the money to make the other 20-something other hours.
Yeah, I think generally, like, today's lifestyle, people want quick and fast. I think the online aspect of it, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see some kind of Lego World / Minecraft Infinity Toy Box kind of, some kind of creative thing like that kind of click in at some point as well. It depends really on who's developing what and who's going to them, but Disney have basically, they will work with anyone basically if you give them money. That's basically kind of the system.
As long as you will give them money and not damage the brand, yeah, might as well. It's very minimum risk for Disney. With they get all the benefits and the publishers get all of the disadvantages. So
yeah, in some ways it's kind of thing of like what's happened with Disney Infinity. I think when you're in the Disney Infinity bubble, it was great for us because we're having all this content, all these games. But if you were not a Disney Infinity fan, or you didn't like the idea of all the figures, or you didn't understand what it was, in all honesty, you've probably had quite a dry, barren time, because there wasn't really a lot of releases within that period. From 2013 onwards, it kind of all dried up for 2 years. And when you look at like the release schedule of all the games, there's not a lot in there because Disney Infinity took over. Had they all been released as separate games, that would have been a lot of games. But I feel like, you know, probably 2018, 2019 is when we're going to start seeing more titles sliding back in again.
Absolutely, because that's also like how long the development cycle takes these days. So, and Disney is going to want to have as much exposure as possible. It's the philosophy they're using with their movies right now. Let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And there's no reason they're not going to do that with games as well. I
mean, I do feel like, you know, like if you look at like the 2016 slate of movies, you weren't likely to, you know, a developer might not necessarily want to take on Pete's Dragon or Zootopia or Moana might be a little bit more of a risk when you don't know what it. Now, they did prove that, like with Lego, if they wait a few months after the movie, depends on how secretive Disney are with the concept. If the game developers have got access to the movie in the very early stages, and the drafts and the scripts, and they can work and they can follow the story very, very well. But usually tying in with the movies has had a bad reputation because they usually rush it. I mean, we heard about how bad Infinity was with Force Awakens, but how good Lego was by just having that extra 6 months. You know, I do feel like some of the brands like Toy Story, Cars, they can take that a little bit longer. The characters are already developed. They maybe don't have to tie it so directly in with the movies. And I think that worked. Whereas, would a company want to take on Coco? Nobody knows what it is. It's a little bit more risky. It's hard to know.
Yeah, and in fairness, I think Force Awakens was a special situation. I think even episodes 8 and 9 aren't going to have nearly that veil of secrecy that 7 did. But it was, Disney's first time handling a franchise that you could actually argue is bigger than any franchise Disney had handled before, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
And now that they've proven that they can do it, they don't need to build the hype for it. It's got its own hype generated into it. We've already seen Rogue One is not nearly as secretive as Force Awakens is, we expect
we know the ending.
Kind of, yeah. We don't know who's going to survive, but we know the ending. Plot twist. The Death Star blows up.
Yeah, we've just rebooted Time. You can't help but feel like the Finding Dory playset that got released for Disney Infinity. That would have been a good separate solo game. I do feel that would have been a good separate solo game had that not been around.
In fact, it might have actually been a better solo game because it might have been restricted by the fact that you only had Dory and Nemo in it. If you could also have Marlin or the octopus or Destiny, the whale shark, these are additional characters. They could have expanded the game out even further. But because there wasn't going to be a market for the figures for them, they didn't end up creating these characters. I mean, this is all hypothetical, but they could have had an even better game as a solo title, not being restricted by the figures.
I'll just have a look here, see if we've got a future slate. I was just trying to see what other ones they've got coming out. That's the wrong page. But I do, there is a lot of movies coming out. I just feel like, but it takes time, as we said. It takes time to kind of get them all out. Let's bring in up here what we've got. Moana, then Galaxy. Oh, we've got Beauty and the Beast. I think it's a little bit too close for doing anything Beauty and the Beast. Let's see what else we've got. Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. Star Wars. Well, we know they're going to do that. Cars out in June of 2017. It might be a bit quick, but if they don't tie, it's hard to know on that one.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because I could see them doing like a Cars racer game. And I'm not saying it's easy to create racer games, but it's definitely easier than creating like a full platform or adventure game.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see a racing game, maybe not even at launch, but maybe like a couple weeks or months after launch.
Pirates.
Sorry, go ahead.
Pirates of the Caribbean again in July. Probably too quick to make a game for that, but some quick tie-ins.
But again, if they were to do, say, a Lego Pirates of the Caribbean 5, and then also or update the Lego Pirates of the Caribbean they already have, add in the 4th movie and the 5th movie, sell that as a new package. That could be really good.
Yeah. We got Spider-Man, obviously hitting cinemas, so we know we've got a big Spider-Man game, so that's good. Thor Ragnarok, don't think we'll see anything for that one there. Coco is November 17. So again, I don't think we're going to see anything for that one. Black Panther 2018. I think we'll see something, but it's not going to be a major release, and it's not going to be a tie into the movie. But they are going to want to exploit. That's probably a really bad word in this context, but they're going to want to utilize the Black Panther license because this is a major outreach title for them. Yeah, and it's important for them. In the same way, they're going to want to have something for Captain Marvel when that comes out in a couple years as well, because that's
you know, it's them being, hey, we've got the female superhero, we've got the other superheroes and whatnot. So there'll be something.
Yeah, and having was playing as Black Panther fighting through Wakanda on Marvel Alliance last night while playing. Yep, sign me up, that's fine. We've also got Gigantic, which is Disney's Jack and the Beanstalk. No word yet. So that's 2018. I thought it got pushed back a little bit more, but that could very easily be a brand that they could be working on very easily.
Avengers, they're making another Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah. Obviously got all the new Star Wars ones, which we've talked about. There's a fourth Toy Story. Ant-Man versus the Wasp, 2018. That's enough time to make a video game.
In fact, since it's a sequel, you know, they could have a game that covered both the original Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. And obviously the Avengers is coming out around that period as well.
Incredibles 2, sorry, is in 2019. Easily enough time for them to get their eggs in, or ducks in a row for that one.
Even some prequel stuff for that. They could have a game coming out before then that then later has DLC to include movie content. So
I mean, we've also got some live action versions. Like they say, they're working on Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast. There's a few other ones in there. So I think generally, I mean, I feel like next year's releases are a little bit tight for them to get a game out. This is where the crossover to some of the other games is a nice, cheap, quick win. But something like Incredibles, Toy Story, those are, I think they're almost shoo-ins for the future. For future video games, separate solo entities. Now, obviously, mobile is another thing that I think is very, very obvious that is one of their core. That's the only thing they're developing internally now is mobile games. Yeah,
and mobile games are a gimme because, relatively speaking, they can pump out mobile games really quickly. We're seeing that right at this moment with Moana Island Life. It's basically, we haven't played it yet. At the time of recording, it's not out yet, but from what we can tell, it's basically a reskinned copy of a game that they've already released several times. So they've got a number of temple run style games. Yeah. They've got a number of match 3 games. They've got the Frozen game, which is currently in soft launch, which is Peggle. It's a Peggle reskin. They can pump out mobile games as quickly as they want.
Reminding me of Frozen. A Frozen 2 game, it is happening. Whoever's got that license to make a separate solo Frozen game, that is going to be happening to tie in with that new movie. Don't know when it's coming out. Wouldn't even surprise me if there's even a Frozen game in development at some point, because there's still money to be made with them. But yeah, mobile is the quick, fast turnaround. We're going to see content being added to their existing games, the structure that kind of Marvel brought in with their kind of tie-in. We'll see add-on, I think, for every single, even next year, I think we'll still see a new Cars mobile game. We'll see a Pirates mobile game. We'll see a Coca. That's almost now, I would say, just like you said, it's a given. It's going to happen.
Right. And then they also have like multiple tiers on this. They've got some games that kind of are more permanent. Games like, say, Disney Magic Kingdoms or Marvel Future Fight and Contest of Champions and stuff like that, where they can just be like, oh, there's a Doctor Strange movie coming out. Yeah. Have Doctor Strange. There's a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Here's Mantis and the Collector and these guys. And Disney Magic Kingdoms, they can literally add anybody they want to that.
Yeah. They're all in that. I think there's all been in that crossover. Probably the last few months has been a lot of meetings and discussions with different developers and plans, and they've had to get like I say, get things sorted. And I'm sure there's been a long-term and short-term plan from Disney licensing of how they're going to work this out, because they need both. They needed to apply both. They had two different sort of fires to put out at the same time, really, when they can their own internal game. But then we don't know how long they've been working on this, how much this has been coming. They might have started franchising out 6 months before we knew they cancelled Infinity. They might have started this in November last year or January. They might have been a little bit further ahead from where we were.
Well, absolutely, and especially if they say wanted a Spider-Man game to come out at least around the time of Spider-Man Homecoming, that had to have been in development for quite some time, because if they only just started when Infinity got canceled,
oh yeah,
there's no way they're going to have a AAA game ready by July 2017.
Yeah, I think Marvel and Star Wars were kind of separate, and they were doing their own separate thing. I think it's the Disney interactive side of things from where they were standing. I mean, they've released a few games over the time. We had like that Fantasia that was released during Disney Infinity, and I just, like I said, they've got two different fires to put out at the same time, and I think long term will be, there's going to be a lot of content. Whether or not they go down such the cheap tie-ins, I don't know if the developers will want it. That's the other problem.
Yeah, I mean, developers, obviously, if you're going to pay for a brand, you want to put some money into it and make sure it's profitable and good choice for you. But it was just occurring to me, because you mentioned some of the Disney games that had come out, like Fantasia and like Disneyland Connect from like 360. Obviously, right now we're kind of in an emerging market of VR games, or a new attempt at them. I could absolutely see Disney revisiting some of these games. Fantasia, Disneyland Connect. They had a Toy Story Connect or a Pixar Connect or something like that. I could see them bringing those back for VR.
Well, actually, I think earlier this year there was a blog post over at the Disney Interactive where they had a special event for a weekend where they were showing off VR, and they were showing off lots of different demos that they've been working on. I know they've released a few things. Now, whether or not we're going to get some short-term experiences on the VR units, Oculus Rift, PlayStation VR, again, that seems to be the whole thing of that short-term little boosts. It depends on how this VR bubble burst goes. I think they have been investing in it, but there again, we don't know now. That was in the days when they were investing in themselves before licensing. This is when they're going to have that issue of, are they going to develop those little independent experiences and treat them like mobile purchases, or are they now? Was that entire thing canned once they stopped vertical development?
Obviously, we don't know for sure, but we do know that there is that lightsaber VR game that got released, and they are releasing the Battlefront expansion for the PlayStation VR at the very least. Right now, in my opinion, the price to enter the VR market as a consumer is way too high, but once that starts coming down, Disney's going to want to get in on this. So
yeah, it's a very fine line between having your finger in the pool to kind of be ready to go for it and be the last one standing and be like, well, I think there's this worry with VR that it's kind of going to be the next Wii kind of gimmick. And apparently there's been a massive drop in VR pickup over the summer. Now, I don't know whether or not that is just because PlayStation VR hasn't launched, and that is the one a lot of people are more interested in because it's the console version and everything works, and all the big VR games are being held back for PlayStation VR. Because when they're saying about, Oculus Rift, I'm sitting there going, are these things out? This is my instant reaction was, you don't tend to think of them being out yet because there's only like little experiences. Whereas VR, you see it on the PlayStation Store, you see in the adverts, there's a date coming up, and there's this physical product. And I don't know with the VR, it's going to be hard to know like long term. I think 10, 15 years time, it might be a bigger thing. But there might also be this thing if people don't look at 3D. 3D is a perfect example of another gimmick that just did not work.
Yeah, having actually played at least a little bit of VR, I can say that some game types really do benefit from VR, but I don't think all of them do. Like, I don't see any reason to play like Super Mario Brothers in VR. What the heck's the point of that? Yeah. But if you're going to do some like first-person shooters, if you're going to do some driving games or flight simulators, space simulators, those are going to be great. Yeah. The one that I tested out was a space flight simulator, and it was fantastic. But in the context of Disney, how many games are you going to put in those genres? Yeah. Star Wars, certainly. But outside of Star Wars, what have you got?
Apparently they are building, there's been rumors of them building a new VR, like Wreck-It Ralph thing. Because I forgot Wreck-It Ralph was on the list. I think we're easily going to see a Wreck-It Ralph video game tie-in.
That could be fun.
They're going to do a VR racing game at the parks with Sugar Rush. So that if they're developing it for the parks, they could easily kind of try and sell that outside as on the outside if they want to. It depends if they want to keep it in just internal as an experience. But I think there's been word. I think the early stages of VR seems to be like if you're in a stationary position, like in a vehicle, it's fine. When you're trying to run around doing first-person shooters, your body gets confused that you're running but you're not moving. Whereas when you're in a vehicle, your brain can tell the difference between being in a vehicle. Like if you're in a tank shooting, it's different than if you're running and shooting. Your brain gets the motion sickness, deals with it differently, and that's been the early reports of what seems to be one of the big issues with games.
Right, and I think that's just an extension of VR will be great with some game types, and other game types will be like, why am I wearing this silly headset when I could just be watching it on TV?
Yeah, I mean, so like Toy Story Mania as an attraction with a shooting game, that could work very, very, very well with it, because it's essentially just what it is. But like you say, you know, and I don't know if Disney are really going to push it. It depends on the money. Until that money starts coming in, we're not going to see any big titles. I think that's the big problem. We're going to see experiences, we might see add-ons, but long term, next 2-3 years, I think that's all we're going to get for the VR until it's proven.
No, I agree completely. And experiences, you know, when they're done, are actually really, really cool. Like I got to experience an underwater one where there's nothing for you to do.
Yeah.
But you're in a cage and you're underwater and an underwater life is swimming around you, and it's awesome. It's a great experience. Am I going to spend $800 on it? No. Would I spend $400 on it for the PlayStation version? No. But if I had something else that I had the VR for, I could see dropping a couple bucks to pick it up on the PlayStation Store. So I think basically what you said is we're going to have to see how the PlayStation VR pans out commercially. Is it successful? Are the games for it any good? Do people end up buying it?
Yeah.
And if they do, great, we'll get some awesome games. And if they don't, then VR joins the Nintendo headset. What was that thing called back in the day?
Boy.
Virtual Boy, yeah.
I still feel like virtual reality, this is something this virtual reality has never really gone away. It's been around for 20, 30 years. You know, the concept is still there. You know, they've been playing around with it for years. They keep wanting to do it, and it seems like it's, you know, I remember trying the Aladdin version in Disney Quest years ago, and that was like a 10-year-old game when I tried it on. You know, they've always been kind of messing around with this stuff, but until the money starts raking in, you're never going to see these massive, great, big experiences. You know, you're not going to see a 10-hour video game where you're in a virtual unit. They just don't. They're not making enough money for me yet, and the technology's not caught up with the concept of it. And I also feel like there is a big thing with video games, sitting down and playing it with a controller. Even if, you know, I know they want the mobile, there is always going to be that audience that will want that kind of experience. It's a kind of it's like reading a book or watching television. It's become just one way. As much as they want to move everyone onto mobile and move everyone onto VR or whatever, not every game's going to work like that. There is always going to be one of people just sitting there playing a game, just normal, as we call it.
And as long as developers have the right expectations in place, then they can definitely get away with that kind of thing. Like, was it on the original Xbox? They had that game, a mech game, where when you bought it, it came with this giant controller that like took up your entire table, and it would cost like $200. But you know, they weren't expecting to sell 1 million copies of it. They were expecting to sell 10,000 copies of it or whatever it ended up. And then, you know, as long as that's what they wanted to do, that's what it did.
I think that's the thing with VR. I think PlayStation VR, they have got quite low. I think they are expecting a low expectation. The trouble is that's kind of catch-22. If it's low people getting it, it then means low people buying the software, and then that means then the money, the companies don't want to take the risk on it because they're not going to get the thing coming back. You know, you might go, right, we'll invest so much money in a 15-20 minute experience and charge them $15-20 for it. That's different to doing a, you know, like you say, a AAA, $2-3 million kind of game. It's just hard to know exactly what's going on. Anything
absolutely.
Anything else you want to add there before we sort of finish off this discussion?
No, that pretty much is it for the moment until we get more announcements until we get closer to, the holiday season when stuff should start popping up.
Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of weird thing of the way now with even the video game industry in terms of like announcements, because of like the different, before everything kind of tended to be getting announced at E3, ready for holiday season, that was it. Now with all these different events taking place throughout the year, everyone's spreading their content out. They're trying to get out, Tokyo Game Show, E3, New York Toy Fair, all these different events are taking place. And so there are always little dribble drabs coming out from different points. At any given day, you could get a press release announcing a video game. I think the way they're getting out the information is a lot quicker, and they're all trying to spread themselves out a bit more.
Yeah, and also, a lot of them are trying to make sure the announcements come out before Christmas season starts, because you don't want to be in a situation where mom or dad is at the store and they're like, oh, I could get Battlefront, but then Disney just announced that Battlefront 2 is coming out, so why should I get this now when next year little Timmy's going to want Battlefront 2 instead?
I also think with Disney as well, the Disney at the top end, they do seem to be scheduling all their games. So this week we are talking about Lego Avengers. Next week we're talking about Star Wars Battlefront. The week after we're talking about Enchanted Tales. The next week we're talking about it. You don't seem to I've been finding this year, you tend to be getting content each week. So if Kingdom Hearts are making an announcement this week, the other games will hold off. You don't seem to be getting a lot of major announcements all within the same week.
Yeah, and that's absolutely planned. They don't want Kingdom Hearts to overshadow the fact that Enchanted Tales came out or whatever. Because, given those two announcements, if they came out at the same time, which one of those is going to get press and which one of them is immediately just going to be dropped. So. And
so like Enchanted Tales doesn't really do that. I mean, obviously with D23 Expo next summer, whether or not they do a big gaming presentation, I hope they do, because they did a lot of announcements at the D23 Expo in 2015. But now they're not directly involved, will they just be bringing in all their different people to make announcements and show off the stuff in one big presentation? I hope so. I've always felt like that was the right way of doing it, because they bring in all their companies, talk about their new video games, like you would do movies. Disney are an odd one. I think the video games, they still view it as an optional extra rather than like a movie. Whereas we look like at the video game schedule just like we do with the movie schedule.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with D23 next year, because I could very easily see them repeating, last year where they have a dedicated video game panel, and I imagine Kingdom Hearts 3 will dominate that panel. Yeah. Or I could see them folding stuff in. They have a panel for, I guess it would be Star Wars 8 at the time, and at the same time they go, all right, well, in addition to the movie, we've got Lego Star Wars 8 coming out a couple months after the movie or whatever. So
or even just go like Lego people have got their own 30-minute panel at a certain time. They might just break it down into different ones, or Square Enix have their own 20-minute, 30-minute presentation. It depends on what it is. I think it's a good time for them to get their own content out of their own thing. So, and they've also moved the event earlier. So I think we'll find out a little bit more next summer, but that's a long way off.
It is.
Yes. So I think that pretty much wraps up this week's discussion. So thank you again, James, for joining me today. And also for you guys listening at home or on the video version, remember you can check us out on our Facebook group, Infinity and Beyond, which is a video gaming group, talk about everything. If you're on Patreon as well, patreon.com/DisKingdom. Thank you for all of you guys' support. And James, where can they find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at IHI_James or vagabondpeak.com.
Vagabondpeak.com. Sounded like a commercial there.
I know. So find us on the webpage for the best deals on the internet, vagabondpeak.com.
And also you can find us over at DisKingdom.com. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on the audio version. So hit that subscribe button. And I shall see you guys in a later video. So Infinity and Beyond. Laters.